Mike. Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1133 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. StickerU.com. Create custom stickers, labels, tattoos, and decals. Palma Pasta. Fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees. The Yes, We Are Open podcast, a Moneris podcast production. The Advantaged Investor podcast from Raymond James, Canada. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. And Canna Cabana, the lowest prices on cannabis, guaranteed. Joining me today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is Brian Good from the Good Brothers. Welcome, Brian, to Toronto Mic'd.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you brought a bodyguard with you. Actually, two of them, but We'll start with a gentleman who's no stranger to this show. You brought FOTM Banjo Dunc with you.
Yeah, I certainly did.
Nice to be back in the hole, Mike.
How long's it been, Mr. Dunc and Fremlin?
It was Sam Grosso last time. I remember the two of us sat and told stories.
Loved it. And I'm so glad you're back. And I'm so glad you brought Brian with you. Brian, what a pleasure. But Brian, we have another person in this room. Let's shout out. Is this your lovely wife, Susie?
This certainly is my lovely wife, Susie. Say hi, Susie.
Hi, Susie.
Say goodnight, Gracie. Well, welcome. A lot of ground I want to cover with you, Brian. I'm very excited about this, and FOTMs have brought in some great questions, and then we're going to find out, what do you have going on with Banjo Dunc and the Whiskey Jack? I'm so excited to talk about that. But you just came from meeting fellow FOTM Bill King, right? How's Bill doing?
Bill's doing great. We go way back. 53 years ago, we met at a place called the Richmond Inn in Richmond Hill, my hometown. And he was playing in a band. I forget the name of the band. He could tell you every member and everybody who was in the audience. He's got a great memory. But it was 53 years ago. He had just moved here from the States. And
he was dodging the draft.
He was dodging the draft, and for good reason. And I'm glad he did. He's
absolutely
the welcome addition to the Toronto music scene. We go back and we've done a few things. Well, we have Janis Joplin in common because he played.
Did you both sleep with her?
They wish. Bill
wishes.
You know that,
Susie?
I asked Bill though, because Janis had a high
sexual libido, shall we say?
Strong libido. And Bill did not enjoy that pleasure.
He played with her, and I mean he played music with her. And we, as James and the Good Brothers on the Festival Express, around that same time in 1970, we got to play musically with Janis Joplin on that train going coast to coast across Canada.
As recently as this afternoon, my son is very discovering music now, music from well before his birth. He's almost 21 years old, and he was saying, "Hey, he was asking, he said, Dad, tell me some women who rock." He wants a list of women I think rock, and I said, "Oh, there's so many women who rock." I said, "But you got to start with Janis Joplin." I literally said that today. I could show you the text, and to hear now you have a connection with Bill King and that you both played with Janis Joplin.
Yeah, it was quite an experience, actually. It was going back to 1969. My twin brother Bruce and I were playing in a place called the Penny Farthing in Yorkville. It was just a little coffee house. And two gentlemen, when I say gentlemen, they were the only guys wearing suits in the place. And they...
narcs.
They looked like narcs. But they were promoters, and they were promoting shows, and they offered us one of our the first major gig we ever did at Maple Leaf Gardens at the time with Grand Funk Railroad, and from there they offered us a management deal. We took it, and because of that management deal, we got to be on that Festival Express because they were the guys who were promoting it.
Wow. Okay. And what are their names, these guys?
It was Thor Eaton and Kenny Walker. Eaton and Walker.
Amazing.
And, yeah.
So sorry, did you say that was 69?
Yeah, that's when we met, and the festival was in 70.
So when did you and your brothers start performing at like coffee houses in like Yorkville? Like when did that begin for you two?
Right around that time, 68, 69. We were playing literally for coffee and chili, pretty much. So we weren't getting paid, but it gave us a stage to play our music.
So sprinkled throughout, obviously, Dunk, you have carte blanche to just chime in with any questions or follow-ups or anything you want to say. You're a great FOTM, you know that. But I have some questions from other FOTMs. They sent these in. One comes from Dale Cadeau, and he says, I still have this beauty in my thinned-out album collection. He's talking about the self-titled The Good Brothers album. He had a picture of it on Twitter. And then he writes, the brothers were stalwarts at the Streetsville Bread and Honey Beer Garden in the late 70s. And he says, good times indeed.
It was good times. Indeed. It was. Thanks for that.
And here's a question from some guy who calls himself Dunk. He says, is it true your brother Bruce thinks he's better looking than you?
Well, he'll tell you that for sure. If you ask him, he'll tell you that.
On a serious note, like we're going to have some lighthearted chatter. I want to find out more about like the Good Brothers, and I have very specific questions. And then I want to find out what you're doing with Whiskey Jack. But I do, if you don't mind, Bruce, Brian, I'd like to offer my condolences to you on the tragic loss of your nephew, Dallas Good, from the Sadies. We miss him quite a bit. I can't imagine what it's like for you guys.
Well, thank you for that. Things are not the same, and they'll never be the same, musically and personally, of course, obviously. And I got to see the Sadies play about 10 days ago at the Red Dog in Oshawa or in Peterborough, sorry. And it's, Travis is doing one heck of a job, I'm telling you, trying to do everything up there. But, the ghost of Dallas is still there on that stage, and that'll never stop.
Well, it's a loss for the entire, music community. But for the family, you're right. That's not something you ever get over.
No, that's true.
You mentioned Bill King earlier, who is a fine photographer. I mean, I could, spend all day looking at great photos that he's taken. But I recently received this book with great photos from Massey Hall, and this is around the time that Dallas passed away. And there's actually a great photo of Dallas in this Massey Hall book. So, just very sad. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Very photogenic guitar player. You can't take your eyes when you see a picture of him. You just can't take your eyes off him.
Right.
As opposed to Brian.
Well, I was going to say on a lighter note here. So Sandy writes in, enjoyed the dances at Sheridan College circa 1979. Great fun. Thanks for playing those. Will you close the Gravenhurst barge season again?
Yes, we did close the barge season this year, as a matter of fact. It was our 30th year there. We obviously skipped a couple of years, the COVID years, but it seems to be back, and we really enjoy that. That's one of our one of our favorite annual shows that we've been doing for all. In fact, Dallas has played that one with us, and Travis played it with us this year. So it's Fred Schultz is the guy who first invited us to play there 30 years ago, and he's still at it.
Amazing. So I'm going to play a little music here. That's why you've all got headphones on. So just a little bit here and there. Let's see what I got here. Where do I begin? Stand by. Oh, yeah, this is actually one I want to start with. Except from the beginning, excuse me. My apologies. That's because Dunk played up my production skills, so I had to make a few mistakes.
Dark eyes drifting through my dreams at night. Distant dancer, hold me tight. Moonlight there flying, I don't mind. Love like firelight, glad my baby loves me. 10 days gone and it's been too long, and I know she's thinking of me. I don't care if it rains or shines, all I see is a light in her eyes. I'm singing tonight on a midnight flight, I know my baby loves me. High white sky.
Midnight Flight. Brian, take us back. So you kind of gave us a taste. What were you saying there?
Singing tonight is right. Yeah, that our first album, it surprised a lot of people, songs like this, because we were known as a bluegrass, shit-kicking bluegrass band.
Right.
And so for us, the producers on that first album were, it was co-produced by John Capac and our good friend Adam Mitchell. And we did a lot of his songs. Adam Mitchell, of course, wrote some tremendous songs for some great artists. Out Among the Stars, for example, we recorded that on a live album later on. And it was recorded also by Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and not to mention Merle Haggard. So,
just those three.
Just
bums.
those three, but they, I have to say, they recorded it after us.
Sounds great. And, for those, we have a lot of Gen Xers listening, and they're going to be surprised, I think, by this fact. But you guys win the Juno Award for Country Group or Duo 8 years in a row?
That's corrct. Who's counting?
I'm counting. Listen, where are all those Junos right now? Does Susie... Does Susie know, where are they right now? Are they on display somewhere?
They're in our house.
Yes,
On the
they.
mantle, yeah.
Okay, so do you have all 8 just side by side? I'm trying to envision it in my...
Well, I have 7 downstairs in the music room and 1 up on the fireplace upstairs. So
They keep one in the bedroom, Mike. Don't kid yourself.
Well, that's what I was getting at. I just wanted to know if he had worked that mojo. But that's wild. So that, by the way, the years are 1977 to 1984. That you guys, and does it get silly? What happened to the 9th year? Is it just you just withdrew yourself from consideration?
No, Prairie Oyster came along.
Okay.
They're great friends of ours. In fact, John P. Allen, he was playing guitar and fiddle for them. He played with us before Prairie Oyster, and they're all good friends. Keith Glass, Rusta Carl. We grew up with them because they were musically and otherwise, because they lived in King City and we lived in Richmond Hill. It's only 4 miles away from each other, so 5 miles. So we hung out together even before we started playing professionally.
When did you realize that you guys were going to make it after all? Shout out to the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Was there a moment where you're like, hey, this is happening? Maybe you're driving and you hear a Good Brothers song on the radio or something like that?
No, I'm still waiting for that to happen.
But Q107 comes around in 77. They must have played some Good Brothers, no?
Scruff Connors played our music on the morning show, and he played a song called The Hot Knife Boogie. It was
a little song for you called The Hot Knife Boogie.
Nice segue.
Yes, we are. And we want you all to sing along with us. Everybody boogie. Say what? The Hot Knife Boogie. That's what I want. Well, went to a party, had the time of our lives. Out in the kitchen, they were heating those knives. They were doing that boogie. Woo! The Hot Knife Boogie. Hey, everybody boogie, we're gonna get high tonight. Well, there weren't no papers.
Yeah, let's face it. No wonder Scruff liked this song, okay? So this is a hashish anthem, is that correct?
That's what it turned out to be, that's for sure. Scruff was a very good friend of ours, and he inspired that song and another song that we wrote called Honk on Bobo. That was his catchphrase. And so that was actually that was recorded live at the CNE Stadium, the old CNE Stadium, and it was a show with Gordon Lightfoot and Harry Chapin. It was to raise money for the the Canadian Olympic team that didn't go to Russia over the Afghanistan.
Well, there was the boycott.
Boycott.
We boycotted Moscow in '80, and then they boycotted. Do I have this right? They boycotted LA in '84, like to retaliate.
Right. So we got political, but that was recorded live at that venue. But then we actually we had Kelly J from Kelly J was with Crowbar. What a feeling! What a rush!
Of course.
He played piano on that session, and then we sent back in the days before computers, we had to send that 2-inch tape to BC, to Vancouver, and we had the Powder Blues Band add the horn section to it. So it was sort of a live studio.
But I was going to say, because I hear the crowd in this jam, and there's that whole live album, like the crowd's so engaged. Is there any sweetening of the crowd? Any smoke and mirrors there? Is that all like live off the floor?
It's live off the floor. Some of the textures are different because there were 3 different venues. One was the El Macombo on this live album that we did. The other was the CNE Stadium, and the other one was a place called the Jubilee Auditorium in Oshawa. And so we took those 3 venues, recordings that we had done over time, picked the best, and ran with it. And so those audiences are real.
So blonde hash, black hash, what was the preference there, Brian?
Afnepo Gani Lebo Pribinismir.
Oh, I see.
Well, you know where you get a good deal on that is Canna Cabana.
Oh, well, of course. That's exactly where we would go for that hash.
That's where I'll go after the set.
Over 100 locations across the country will not be undersold on cannabis or cannabis accessories. All right, we were talking. Actually, I'm going to come back to Scruff. Man,
Let's
I
go
love
back
Scruff.
to hash a little bit later, too.
I was dancing to the band, having lots of fun, when I looked across the floor and a fight had just begun. And when the fight was over, neither one of them had won, but they threw me out of my ear. Some big ugly mother with tattoos on his arms. I tried to tell him that I didn't mean him any harm. I looked up at him, I was pouring on the charm. I said, honk on Bobo too. Whoa, everybody here, you can honk on Bobo. Everybody there, they can honk on Bobo. Anybody, anywhere, honk on Bobo before Bobo honks on you.
All right, Brian, is this another drug song?
I jumped in the sack with the
It gets to be at the end when
Are all the Good Brothers songs about drugs, Brian?
you'd think so.
No wonder you get along with Banjo Dunc so well.
Let me put it this way: all our popular songs are about drugs.
See, and as a kid, I had no idea. Like, this is, I mean, and I'll tell you later, like, where I first really learned about the Good Brothers. I'll ask you about somebody very soon. But, so this was adopted by Scruff, essentially? Because Honk on Bobo, I always knew Honk on Bobo, from Q107 and Scruff Con.
Like I said, it was a catchphrase of his. He would say, it was an insult. He'd say, why don't you go honk on Bobo? So you could take it to mean whatever you wanted.
Oh,
but
sure.
I
So
think it meant one thing in particular.
Okay, so it might not be drugs. It might actually be a self-satisfaction, maybe, or something of sexual nature.
Well,
What do you think, Banjo? What do you think honk on Bobo means?
Sex or drugs? It's pretty much one or the other.
Sex or drugs, and you guys bring the rock and roll.
here's the verse. The drug verse is coming up here.
Anybody, anywhere, honk on Bobo before Bobo honks on you. I was driving down the interstate and thought I'd have a toke when a trooper pulled me over and I nearly had a stroke. When I wound down the window, I said, can't you take a joke? And that's when I landed in jail. Well, the very next morning I had to see the judge. I begged the man for mercy till I knew he wouldn't budge. I'm not the kind of fella who would ever hold a grudge, but he can honk on
Bobo too.
Oh, everybody here, you can honk on Bobo. Everybody
Let's
there,
go,
they
Banjo
can
Dunc.
honk
Let's
on
go.
Bobo.
Anybody, anywhere, honk on Bobo before Bobo honks on you. Everybody here, you can honk
Okay,
on
so lots of
Bobo.
ground to cover, but maybe Banjo Dunc, tell us, like, if we want to honk on Bobo live in person. So this wonderful gentleman you brought to me, Brian Good from the Good Brothers, gonna join you? Where? Tell
Yes.
me where. Like,
Yes.
get that. We'll revisit it later.
Yeah. And his wife, Susie, of course.
Of course.
The Redwood Theater, November 4th, 2022.
So November 4th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m.
Correct.
Brian and Susie Good are going to drive down from Simcoe County to the
correct.
Redwood Theater to join. Now, remind us. You've been on many times,
Yeah.
but who's in Whiskey Jack?
Whiskey Jack is Douglas John Cameron.
Did I tell you? I don't mean to
FO
interrupt. I met him for the first time at TMLX 10.
I heard all about it.
Okay.
And when's he going to be an FOTM?
I told him, and I looked him in the eyes and said, I want you on Toronto Mike. I'm like Uncle Sam. I pointed at him. I said, I want you on Toronto Mike. Then he says he'd love to do it. We just literally have to get the darn date and time in the calendar. But
Darn right.
It's going to happen.
And Billy McGinnis, who is Stompin' Tom's fiddle player for 10 years. He's from PEI. And our bass player is a fella named Rayo Rochon, also from PEI. And that's the combo.
Well, I can already tell from this, like the last half hour, that's going to be a blast.
Yes, well, you figure you've got a bunch. First of all, you've got all of us. You've got Brian Good. You've got Susie Good. You've got Marie Bottrell, country music royalty. I mean, they won 8 Junos. She lost 8 Junos.
She's the Susan Lucci of the Junos.
Absolutely. And
why doesn't Brian give her a couple?
That's what I want.
He doesn't need 8.
Well, as a matter of fact, Marie and her husband are going to stay with Brian and Susie on the 4th evening of the 4th. They're going to drive to Brian's house and they're going to stay with them. And I'm lobbying hard for her to leave with 2 or 3 of these. And if they don't give them, I think she should steal the damn things.
Yeah, just like towels from a hotel.
Who could blame her? Now, okay, so I've heard this described as Canadian country music legends. I've heard it described as a hybrid of Prairie Home Companion and the Grand Ole Opry with a little vinyl cafe thrown in the mix.
Yeah.
That's a good description, and that's something I'd want to see.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, so look, not obviously it's Toronto Mike. So the Toronto show, which is November 4th, is the one to hype. But Perry Sound, there's listeners in Perry Sound. Is that the next stop?
Well, yeah, that's the next night, and the beautiful Stocky Center, which we played quite a few times. But then the afternoon after that, now you're talking Brian and Susie country, because this is serious downtown Simcoe County in Alliston, Ontario.
Which is, correct, let me think here. This is 89 and 400, because my grandmother lived in Guildford.
89 and... More Highway 27 and 89.
Okay, so it's to the, because it's yes, to the west, right? Because I'm just thinking in my head here, yes, because my grandmother lived to the right. Like we'd get off at that Cookstown Alliston Outlet Mall.
And you'd go toward the lake.
Right. And if you drop down to 88, you got Bradford.
You got Bradford and 88, and if you keep going,
We're west of that.
You're west. Okay, and that's where they got like a Honda plant there, right? There's
they got the big Honda plant in Alliston. It's New Tecumseh is the county.
Okay.
So,
and what's the Gibson Center like in Alliston? I haven't been there.
it's a beautiful little theater.
Yeah, beautiful historic place, and again, it's a place that we've played quite a bit. There's these are our people, Mike.
Yeah.
This is where the serious fans live up that way, and they'll support this show big time.
Well, thank you for starting here where the non-serious fans are here in Toronto. So thank you.
Well, you got to admit, come on now, Mike. I've listened to a few of these podcasts, man, and I'm looking at the list right now, and let's see, country. Well, I'm sure there's someone.
I
on this
have
list.
a blind spot, but I'm trying to fix that. I'm so excited Brian Good is here.
Today, for sure. Look at this. You got royalty here.
I'm honestly, and I'm getting very specific. I'm so glad Brian's here. There's one big reason I'm going to ask him about in a minute, but I just want to let people know if you want tickets. And how many is it? 4 shows in total?
No, it's 3 shows this time.
3 shows. Okay.
Yeah.
So these 3 shows I talked about, like Toronto, Perry Sound, Alliston, you go to whiskeyjackmusic.com.
Correct.
Go there right now. That's an order, all
Correct.
FOTMs. And man, it's going to be a blast. Okay. I have a great question for you from Rick A. This is for Brian, not Banjo Dunc. I got many other questions for Banjo Dunc, but they're all personal and private, so I'll have to ask those later. Rick A. writes in, don't ask why, but I was recently listening to the 1983 Blue Jays home opener. The Good Brothers sang the anthems. Any recollection of performing this event or any other pregame anthem that ever stood out to you, Brian?
Well,
Sing it now, Brian.
In French, please.
actually, I do recall that very well, actually, because it was a playoff. There was 2 of them. We did a playoff game too when
85 would be playoffs.
What's his name? This Oakland center fielder with a
Henderson
hit the ball so far.
Oh, that's Jose Canseco.
Thank you. See, there's a baseball.
It was the
fan.
500 level at the Dome. It's like I still think it has a record for.
We sang the anthem at that game.
89.
Very good. 89 it would have been. And there was another time which was a little more insignificant. But then, of course, we did a couple of anthems at the for the Toronto Maple Leafs at the old Maple Leaf Gardens when Pat Burns was the coach. And as a matter of fact, Pat Burns used to play guitar with us on occasion in the off season. Yeah.
Brian, let's not bury the lead here. This is when I learned about the Good Brothers. Okay, I admit, Banjo, I wasn't raised, even though my mom loved Kenny Rogers. So there's a lot of Kenny Rogers. She played Kenny Rogers all the time. But
good taste.
In that greatest hits album that has the Lionel Richie Lady on it, Lady.
Yeah.
That album a million times. Thank you. You're mine. I don't even remember the words, but it's fantastic. Okay. But what am I saying here? It was the Pat Burns. So Pat Burns, coach of our Toronto Maple Leafs, he joins. Tell me everything you can about the late, great Pat Burns, because I love that guy.
He was a great guy. He was a good musician. He played guitar. It's funny that when he played with us, and of course it drew some press, and he said he came into his office at the Gardens, and he said there was a representative from Fender Guitars, and they wanted to give him a Telecaster, a Harley Davidson Telecaster with all the fringe and the buckles and the orange and the colors and everything else. And that was for him playing guitar with us once on stage. And my beef was, nobody's coming to me and offering me free hockey gear. And
I can feel
furthermore,
the resentment.
I was very resentful. They never came to me and offered me new guitars, but here they are giving a hockey coach carte blanche. Anyway, it was fun. He was a great guy. In fact, we did an album with him that was never released. It was just a recording we did together, and it was all Irish music, and it was we called ourselves the Butcher Boys, and we were butchering the songs. But no, it really came out nicely. It was a lot of fun to do. We still have the recording somewhere. We had thought about releasing it at one time, and then Pat sadly, tragically got sick and is no longer with us. But
no, very sad, very sad. But it's funny. I was obviously I still am actually. It plagues me. It haunts me, if you will. But a big Leafs fan. So when Pat Burns was playing with the Good Brothers, me and my friends are like, oh, who are these Good Brothers? Why aren't they the Great Brothers? And you start to dig in. We were being educated basically thanks to Pat Burns. There must have been some reawakening of the new generation when Pat Burns was hooked up with you guys.
Well, it wasn't the first time that we had aligned ourselves with the Toronto Maple Leafs. In 1975, when we did our first album, we were, of course, like every other Canadian act, looking for financing. And at the time, 1975, there was a defenseman. His name was Dave Dunn, and he put up the money for our first album. He and another guy, and that was our first Juno Award. The album you heard, Midnight Flight, that was financed by Dave Dunn, and we used to be sort of the house band for the Toronto Maple Leafs back then. And of course, it was Daryl Sittler, Boreas Salming, Dave Keon, Ron Ellis, Eddie Shack. And the list goes on of great players on that particular team. Oh, Tiger Williams.
Of course.
The Tiger. So, and Red Kelly was the coach at the time. And it was in the old days of the good old days of the Toronto Maple Leafs when they still weren't winning.
Nothing's changed.
Well, hopefully this will be the year.
Oh, yeah. I haven't heard that one before. Listen. No. I'm like, let's see you in April and see what happens because, regular season success from this team is like yawn. Like I've seen this movie before. Let Austin score 60. That's fine. But can you win a series, please? It's been a while.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, I beg of thee.
Do you know the last year the Toronto Maple Leafs won a playoff series? Not the Stanley Cup. We all know that's 67. When was the last year they won a playoff series? Anybody know?
Was it 93?
Oh, no, it's much more recent than that, thankfully. But 93 was the... Actually, no, we've been to the conference final since then with Pat Quinn as the coach. But the answer is 2004. That's like a single series, 2004. That's awful.
Well, when I die, I want the Toronto Maple Leafs to be my pallbearers, just so they can let me down one last time.
He's been holding that one in the reserve.
I've been dying.
Now I need to follow up by to say shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. Okay?
There you go. Perfect.
Proud sponsors of the program.
What a segue.
Okay, and before I ask you this question, Brian, from Buds Always, I think that means he's a Leafs fan, actually. It's a handle on Twitter, Buds Always. Do you enjoy beer? Do you partake in the drinking of a craft beer?
Yes, I do. I enjoy any kind of beer, almost.
Almost. Well, you're going to go home. So brewed right here in Southern Etobicoke is Great Lakes beer. It's delicious, fresh craft beer, and I'm going to set you up with some fresh craft beer to take home with you.
Fantastic. I love the can. I love the design.
Oh, they do great artwork. Absolutely. So you're going home with a beer, but also because you're going to be hungry when you're drinking that beer. I have a frozen lasagna for you. It's in my freezer upstairs. So that box is empty, but I'll fill it up before you leave. Palma pasta, literally delivered today. I said, I got Brian Good from the Good Brothers coming. I said, oh, and can you sneak another one in there for my good friend Banjo Dunc? And they said, anything for Dunc and Fremlin. So you too, Banjo. You get yourself a nice large meat lasagna from the freezer too. So thank you, Palma Pasta. Thank you, Great Lakes Brewery. Buds Always. The question is this, and I actually don't understand the question. So Brian, you're going to explain it to me, or you're going to tell me Buds Always has been smoking a little too much bud. He says, ask him how Joe's lip is.
That's a line from the Hot Knife Boogie. He got too close and he burned his lip.
You know what?
Then there's Joe. He thinks he's hip. He got too close and he burned his lip. Okay.
I should have known that.
There you go. See, he's doing his
Dunk,
homework.
did you know that one?
I didn't know.
Okay, I don't feel so bad
I was
now.
so stoned when I listened to that song. I had no idea what it was about.
Shout out to Canna Cabana. I'm going to play another jam, and then hopefully we can chat a little bit about it. But here is some more live Good Brothers.
From our very first album is a song that he wrote about a garden that he grew and the rabbit that ate that garden.
Out in an open field, strange crop out in yield, a handsome plants like you have never seen. There was a dozen in all, and they stood 5 feet tall, and their color was organic green. Well, I heard someone mention, a good weed is your intention. Don't cover them or keep them from the sun. Powers that be, I let them grow free, and that's when all my problems begun. Well, now enters the rabbit, who seemed to have a habit of eating leaves or anything that's green. He'd lean back on his hind feet, and then he'd start to eat until 2 feet up the stalks had been stripped clean. Now there's a rabbit running around, he's hopping up and down, he's freaked out, well he grins and wags his tail. He's got 2 bloodshot eyes, and he doesn't realize, to get him high I could have gone to jail.
So, Brian, we mentioned your twin brother, Bruce, but also let's shout out Larry Good. So the Good Brothers are your younger brother, Larry, your twin brother, Bruce. Who's a better banjo player, Larry Good or Duncan Fremlin?
He can be a shit, Brian, when he wants to be.
Oh, he's doing a good job right now. I'll tell you, putting me on the spot. Well, I think they're both equally good. They have their own style. And they're both terrific banjo players. I should be a politician.
Have you considered running for office? You'd have a chance of a non-answer like that. Okay. So, I know I'm causing some trouble there, but I'm curious, the writing process, can you shed some light, enlighten us? Let's take this song, for example. This is The Rabbit. How does this, give us the details? Somebody write a melody and a hook or something, and then somebody starts writing lyrics? How does the writing process work for a song like The Rabbit?
Well, at that time, back in the 70s, that's our first album. Bruce and I were writing independently. We weren't writing together. So you'd have to ask Bruce that question because that's his song. But it is a true story. He had a few plants. He did go back at one point to check them out or to water them, whatever it was, and he found that they had been raided by rabbits. And I asked him how he knew it was rabbits, and he said because of the little brown balls that were little brown balls of poop that were around the plants. Anyway, there was that. But these days, when we write together, it's either or. One will come up with the lyric, an idea for a lyric, and then we start into it together. And we either collectively or independently, somebody will come up with a tune. It's not like Gilbert and Sullivan. It's not one writes the lyrics and the other
Right,
writes
or like
music.
Elton John.
Right. and Bernie Taupin.
Right.
No, we just sort of wing it. We get an idea and run with it. So that's basically it. But it's just one of these. There's no magic behind it, or there's no real. It's magic when it happens. Thank you, dear.
Susie's right. It's just magic when it happens. Hey, I think now at this point, Brian, you've earned yourself a Toronto Mike sticker, courtesy of stickeru.com.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
And I know I shouted out Ridley Funeral Home, but they did send over. You each got if you pull. So Banjo, you pull that white thing, and this I won't put in your eyes, but you have yourself a nice flashlight.
Beautiful.
You need to see in the dark. One for you, one for Banjo Dunc.
Where's the gift from Canna Cabana?
You know what?
Oh,
They call this the Afterglow. It's a hand pipe from Canna Cabana. That's yours, buddy.
Oh, that'll come in handy.
Yeah,
for
enjoy.
someone.
Enjoy.
I have a there's a segue into it. I guess it's not really a joke. It actually happened.
Yeah.
I don't want to step on your
No, please.
your sponsors
step
here,
on
but
everything.
But
fine.
when the Blue Jays first came to Toronto, the question was, how did they get the name
Labatt's Blue.
Blue Jays? Well, that's there you go. However, there's more to it than that.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm sitting there wondering. I'm watching the ball game and saying, why did they call them the Blue Jays? And then I realized I was sitting there. I had a blue in one hand and a J in the other, and it all made sense.
That's way better than mine.
Are you going to tell them your smuggling story, Brian?
Oh God!
I'm ready.
How much time do we have here?
How much time do you have?
That's James.
I think it's a good lesson for
I have a big hard drive here. Let's go.
I think it's a good lesson for the little kiddies out there that want to smuggle drugs across the border. I think Brian.
Jeez. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least I didn't get busted. But the story goes, we had a rule. James and the Good Brothers. This is back in 1970. And the rule, of course, was pretty simple. Don't carry drugs across the border. We were on our way to play at the University of Syracuse, and we were crossing the border. And if we had pot, we'd put it in a jar and stash it somewhere and then pick it up later on the way back if we came back that way. So at any rate, we got to the border, and they, of course, with long hair and on our musicians, they pulled us over. They brought us into the office, and they started searching the van, we had a station wagon at the time. And so they brought us up to open our suitcases and things like that, and we're standing around, and suddenly the pungent smell of hashish sort of permeated. And so we're all looking at each other saying, what's going on here? And the Border Patrol, the American side, they're tearing the thing apart.
The wood paneling's coming off.
They're looking. They said, "Where is it?" And I'm saying it's patchouli oil. They said, "I don't think so." So we were there for a couple of hours, and God. So at any rate, finally they did let us go because we did have a gig and we had the proper papers and everything else. So they let us go. Well, they held us up for a long time. So we were driving down the highway. And I said, pull over. They pulled over, and what had happened was I broke the rule. Oh. I had taken a piece of hash and wrapped it in tin foil, and I'd taken the lens or the dome light lens off the cap,
Right.
and I had tucked it behind the light. Now, it was one of those fuse lights, and as soon as they opened the door of the thing, it started burning.
Right.
The hash actually started burning, and it just stunk. Like
You got away with it.
Bruce and James had no idea that I had done that, and I'll tell you, they really lit into me when they found out what had happened. However, they had no problem smoking it. Anyway, that was pretty dumb on my part, and I was just...
But you never again, right? That was like you dodged that bullet, and you were like, never again will I...
Dodged that bullet.
Okay.
Until Bruce... until we were flying one time, quite a few years later, as the Good Brothers this time.
Right.
And Bruce had a little film can with some pot in it.
Right.
And it was before 9/11 and all that, so it was pretty easy to get through. But there was a security; they'd just look through your bags and send you on. But they picked up this little film can. The guy popped the cap off it and smelled it, and he said, "What is this?" And Bruce reached over and said, "Let me see that." And he grabbed it from the guy and he took off.
Oh!
He took off right there. He was out of the line and out of the airport. He went outside.
Just gone.
Threw it away. Well, Larry and I, of course, we said we can't go because we're going to do flying somewhere to a gig. Said there's no point in us going unless he's coming with us. So we were waiting in the terminal for him, and the two Mounties and the security guard come walking up to me.
Okay.
Remember, this was my twin brother that did that.
Right.
And the security guard said, "That's the guy."
Oh.
And they said, the RCMP said, "Do you want to be searched here or do you want to go to a room?" I said, "I'm afraid you're making a huge mistake." The guy said, "It was him, officer." And they said, come with us. And they were about to take me down to their interrogation room.
They were putting the rubber gloves on. Where they...
That's right. And Bruce walked up. Now, he had gotten rid of it, and he walked up to us. And I said, "Are you sure it's not him that you have in mind?" And the security guard looked at him and looked at me, and he said, "Well, it was one of you." And then the RCMP said, "All right, guys, on your way."
Oh, you dodged another bullet.
Right. Case closed.
Oh, that's...
That's the advantage of having an identical twin brother.
Oh, because then you can just point at each other like that
Right.
Spider-Man meme or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. Oh my goodness! So we're talking about weed here, and of course Bill King. Bill King loves his weed, man. Bill King, my buddy Mark Hebscher, who I record with every Friday. Hebsy Man loves his weed. Hebsy Man's in my backyard in a couple of weeks for a special episode. We're all gonna get high on live on the recording. We got the guy from Canna Cabana coming over. There's
Nice.
another guy who's joining us. One of the biggest, most wonderful potheads I know, Canada Kev. Now, Canada Kev, when he heard Brian Good was coming on, sent in this great question. So we're going back with this one, but he goes, "I need to know more stories about their time on the incredible Festival Express, going to California to record an album with the members of the Grateful Dead." He wants to know, did Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir play on that album as well?
Okay, where do I start? It was a fantastic trip.
In the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so it was the Grateful Dead. We were on the Festival Express, and we were invited by the Grateful Dead to go to San Francisco to record. We took them up on their generous offer. We did do our first album called James and the Good Brothers, and Jerry Garcia did not play on it. There is a steel guitar, but it was Ollie Strong played on. It was a Canadian guy. However, Bill Kreutzmann played drums.
Right. He's credited on that.
Yes, and Jack Cassidy, the bass player for the Jefferson Airplane, played bass. Actually, played bass balalaika, believe it or not.
Okay, I don't even know if I could tell them apart. But
It's a diamond-shaped guitar-looking
Okay.
thing. It's, I think, a Russian or some kind of...
You own one of those, Dunk?
I have no idea what he's talking about.
balalaika.
Banjo or
Balalaika.
GTFO?
Google it. No, it's an unusual instrument, but that was that. And what was the other question? It was,
Well, basically, any stories you can share about the Festival Express.
Who did you sleep with, Brian?
Where did you sleep last night?
Well, actually, it was quite an experience. They had several cars, of course. There were equipment cars that carried the sound system, stage, all the gear. There were jamming cars. There was an acoustic jamming car. There was an electric jamming car. There were sleeper cars, of course. There were the club cars where you could eat, and there was a rehab car. But there were doctors on board. There was a doctor on board because we're on a train and a lot of people. It was a great experience, but I guess that was when we got to meet all these great artists and become a part of that San Francisco scene. We did play at Fillmore West with the New Riders of the Purple Sage. They became friends of ours because we were at the time we were sort of new on the scene, so were they. And we played it with Boss Gags at the
Wow.
At the Fillmore. We lived in San Rafael, just outside of San Francisco. We rented a house there for the year we were there, but turned out we came home. Bruce and I had roots here, but James was from Winnipeg originally, and he was single.
James Aykroyd.
And he was at the Winnipeg scene. He's, Neil Young and Randy Bachman. They were all in that same circle. They all knew him, and I didn't realize that until he passed away about 20 years ago now. And
were you a bluegrass band at that time?
We were playing. It was an auto harp and 2 guitars and a bass. We were doing more of a Crosby, Stills, Nash harmony original material. We were covering some Merle Haggard stuff and just sort of sprinkling it with country music, sort of like the Byrds were back then.
Country music, Mike, you know what that is, eh?
Yeah, that's Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Banjo Dunk,
CFGM.
the big three.
CFGM, CFGM.
Oh,
Jane Houghton mentioned CFGM.
You know
and
what?
You had no idea.
No. That's 640, right?
You who knows more about radio than anybody in the city.
Okay, let me ask you this, Banjo.
know.
I'm glad you're calling me out. I'm going to ask you, what year did it flip from country? Like, what year did 640 stop playing country?
They didn't. They're still playing country, aren't they?
CFGM.
You might want to check that radio.
CFGM is long gone.
Long gone, right? But we're talking at some point in the maybe early 80s, or I'm out to lunch here. I remember I was listening to 680 CFTR for the top 40 in the early 80s. That was my jam. They weren't playing the Good Brothers on 680.
They were?
I heard them there.
Okay, what song? I want to know.
Fox on the Run.
Okay, Fox on the Run. I have a question about Fox on the Run. See, this is all my way to show off my great segues here. But this came in from Langer. In fact,
She walks through the door, leaning down to the river. Her hair shone like golden hot northern sun. She took all of that poor boy could give her and left me to die like a fox on the run. Like a fox on the run. Well, everybody knows the reason for the fall, and woman tempted the man in Paradise's hall. Now this woman tempted me and took me for a ride. Like a lonely fox, I need a place to hide. She walks through the corn, leaning down to the river. Her hair shone like golden hot morning sun. She took all the love that a poor boy could give her and left me to die like a fox on the run. Like a fox on the run.
okay, today I learned this was played on 680 CFTR, all hits. So what, Tom Rivers might kick this out in the mornings? I know he came over from 1050. He was there when I was listening in the early 80s. But I want to shout out Langer. He's a good FOTM, friend of Toronto Mike, which, by the way, Brian, you're now an FOTM as well, joining a club that includes the great Banjo Dunk. Do you want to be a member of any club that would have Dunk as a member? But Langer just wanted to write it, and he remembers listening to this jam as a young boy, and he was quite fond of it. So I was going to dedicate this to Langer. Dunk
Mike.
When you were warning Susie and Brian like how this hour or so would go, I'm curious. Well, firstly, I am actually curious. Like, what did you say when you said, "Okay, I know you never heard of Toronto Mike, but here's what's going on"?
Okay.
Tell me what you said, and then I'm going to ask you about
okay.
something specific.
So I said, think Brian Lanahan behind a mic on a
like
podcast. Think the research that Brian went in. You're going to be asked questions that's really going to blow your mind. And I think you're up to the task there today. You've blown Brian's mind today, Mike.
Did you tell Brian that I did an entire 2.5 hour deep dive into the charity single "Tears Are Not Enough"?
I did. And you have some questions about that, I am sure.
I do. I'm looking Brian in the eyes right now. Brian, what do you remember about that experience? And I mean detail, like who invited you? What do you remember about recording that day? Did David Foster tell you you were in the chorus,
Who did
I
you
suppose,
drive with? Who drove you home?
And tell me, was Mark Holmes the dink I heard he was? Shout out to Platinum Blonde.
Oh, I'm not gonna get into that.
Come on.
Then I'm cutting your mic.
No, I remember. Well, I went with Gordon Lightfoot. Actually, I picked him up and I drove him there. We both arrived together. The reason I was part of it was they invited a good brother. We had to sort of flip a coin because
There was a room for both of you, or I guess
for
there's
all
three
three
of you.
of us.
Right.
So it was just a matter of numbers. So they asked which one wanted to. I happened to live closer to the city than any of the rest of the guys, and so they chose me. I didn't. I was happy they did. So I arrived with Gordon Lightfoot. Bernie Fiedler was waiting for us, pacing, because his boy was on his way, Gordon.
Right.
But okay, so we go in and all these people well, of course, there was Brian Adams, who wrote the song, and David Foster are behind the glass. We were all just doing our parts, singing the choruses. I was on the chorus. I didn't get to sing a lead line. Gordon did, of course. Neil Young did. And here's one part I remember. We were watching Neil do his part and listening to him, and David Foster said, "Neil, could you do that one more time? You were a little flat." And he said, "Flat? That's what I do." He said,
That's like my sound,
He said,
man.
"That's my sound." He said, "You know that story?" He said,
I actually do know that story, and I just love that story.
Yeah, he said, "That's my sound." And Foster said, "Hey, you're right. Sorry about that."
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I've had conversations with a few people. Recently, Dan Hill was on the program, and I was pestering him. Were you at the reunion show? Because David Foster got some kind of. Were you invited to the reunion show?
No.
Because that's bullshit. I'm going to protest.
Yeah. It's like we weren't invited to, well, we were invited to the, it was sort of a reunion of the Festival Express. The people, when they premiered the documentary. It was a Dutch company that had a father and son that had done all the recording. And they, we met with the producers and everybody afterward, and there was somebody like Bonnie, Delaney and Bonnie Bramlett. She was there. There were a few other artists there, but at any rate, after talking to him, he said, I would have included you a segment of you guys if I'd have known you were still playing together. Because in the jamming cars, we do show up. It was just a flash of us with I think there's Sylvia Tyson, Bill Kreitzman, Jerry Garcia, a few of these people, and my brother and I were part of that. Just a sort of a flash. And he said, but if I had known you were here and still working together and that you'd be here, I could have easily put in a clip of James and the Good Brothers. One of the interesting things that happened to us in Calgary.
Yeah.
We didn't even have drums back then. We were just bass, 2 guitars, bass, auto harp, playing sort of an acoustic thing.
Right.
And in Calgary, those the Chinook winds come in. Well, the drum kit that was behind us, not being used, blew right off the stage, right past us and into the audience. that was one of the highlights of the thing. But while we were in Calgary, we were in the. Here's another story. We were. Bruce and James and I rented a car, and we were going to Banff. We'd never been to Banff. We'd never seen the Rocky Mountains. So we rented a car, and we saw Janis Joplin. And of course, we had met by then, and we were acquainted anyway. We said, we're going into the mountains. Do you want to come along with us for the experience? She said, I ain't into trees and rocks. So at any rate, aside from all that, we did drive into Banff, and we got pulled over by the RCMP. Well, long hair in a new car,
right?
Type thing. So we got pulled over, and we had our instruments with us, and so we told them that we were playing at the Festival Express. And they said, "Prove it." This actually happened.
Wow!
So we took out the instruments, and we played, of all songs, "Alberta Bound."
Nice,
Gordon Lightfoot's song,
right?
For these guys. They said, "Yep, okay, on your way." Thank you. That's good. It's almost like showing ID.
Oh, that's fun. That's great.
You could do a whole show on RCMP stories, Mike. Musicians and RCMP stories, like the one that stole a chunk of hash out of our car on just outside Winnipeg back in 1981. Lots of stories.
Well,
like
tell me that story right now.
Well, no, they just again.
That's it. You
Car full of long hairs. The RCMP pull us over and he makes us sit in the ditch and searches the car, and we get back in, and away we go.
And it's 81.
Yeah, 81. Our bass player goes, geez, what happened to my hash? I'd stuck it in the seat. Well, it was gone. The guy found it and absconded with it.
Maybe you were lucky.
Yeah.
All right, just bringing you back to
reality.
Tears are not, back to life. Tears are not enough. Just trying to think of things. One thing that's interesting, you might find it interesting, maybe not, is that I was talking to Terry David Mulligan about, because he was in the room when David Foster and Bruce Allen are kind of like, there's a documentary and you see him kind of sitting there, whatever. And I always wondered why Buffy St. Marie was not at this recording. Where was Buffy St. Marie? Like, she'd be a natural, I think, to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And Terry David Mulligan talked about the phone call Bruce Allen got, and then Bruce gets this call, and he hangs up, and he goes, Buffy bailed. And I've been using the expression Buffy bailed anytime somebody can't make something, or I got an extra ticket, Buffy bailed. So we didn't have any Buffy St. Marie. We also, try to think who else. Leonard Cohen was not, I'm not sure where he was. You have any insight? Where was Leonard Cohen? Where was he, Brian?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Was Jim Valance there? He co-wrote this
Jim
with
Valance was there, yeah.
With Brian Adams, of course.
He played drums on our first album, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
He played drums on. We did a cover of Brown Eyed Girl, and
that was a hit for you guys. No, for you guys, wasn't it?
Well, it got airplay. Yeah.
Well, and Aces How Long? Those were both.
How Long? We recorded those in with Bill Henderson from Chilliwack.
Right.
He there was Bill Henderson, and there was Brian McLeod. Was another guy. They were members of Chilliwack, and we were back then. We were managed by and our record label was Solid Gold Records, and it was Dixon and Propass were our management team, and so they also managed the Headpins, Chilliwack, a number of groups back then.
They were a pretty big company at that time, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. At any rate, so they hooked us up with these other acts that were on our label, and it was a good time. They were good times back then.
And the B-side to How Long, your cover of Aces How Long, the B-side's Hot Knife Boogie, right?
If you say so. Probably is, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is, which is wild. Okay, so I have another gift for you. Another gift for you, Brian and Susie. You guys can share this, obviously. And Banjo Dunc, you get your own, because I understand you don't live with Brian and Susie, so you need your own. Okay. Wireless speakers. So Bluetooth, you can play music on those, of course. But you know what else you can play on those? You know what else you can play on your new wireless speakers? Moneris sent those over, and they want you to listen to the Yes, We Are Open podcast. It's a Moneris podcast production, telling the stories of Canadian small businesses and their perseverance in the face of overwhelming adversity. FOTM Al Grego. who's quite the singer himself, actually. He hosts this fine program, and you could subscribe to the Yes We Are Open podcast at yesweareopenpodcast.com. Season 3 is underway. So you're going to listen to that on your new Moneris wireless speakers, but you're also going to listen to the Advantaged Investor podcast from Raymond James. Every time I say the words Raymond James, I think about the Kenny Rogers song, Reuben James. But these are two different people. Okay, so what do you get with the Advantaged Investor podcast? You get insights from leading professionals. You get valuable perspective for Canadians who want to remain knowledgeable, informed, and focused on long-term success. Chris Cooksey does a great job hosting the Advantaged Investor. So you got yourself new speakers.
All right. Christmas comes early.
Christmas is here. One more jam here because I have Brian Good in the basement.
Last night and the hall light was on. Looked there beside me and I saw she was gone. I ran to the window and I looked outside. She got into his car. Now it's my turn to cry. Oh, please come back to me. Oh, please, please come home.
Sounds amazing. Sounds great.
Great production, eh? Great production.
Oh, thank you. That's that honking guitar is Danny McBride, not the actor Danny McBride, the musician and the artist.
Not the Eastbound and Down guy.
No, Danny McBride is Bob McBride's brother. Bob was lead singer for Lighthouse, and Danny played with us, and he went on to play with Chris de Burgh after that, and
Lady in Red.
Exactly, that guitar.
Can I tell you, the primary school I went to in grade 7 and 8, we had dances, and that's the jam. You got to have the nice, close, slow dances.
Yeah.
Lady in Red, Chris de Burgh.
And
I'll
that
never
sexy
forget.
guitar riff that he plays.
I'll never forget, Brian.
It's pretty cool.
I need a moment. Do you mind?
But and then he went on after Chris de Burgh. He played with, the guy, Hasselhoff.
He's big in Germany.
Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff?
Yeah. He
Big in Germany.
Big in Germany, yeah.
Germans, as the great, Germans love David Hasselhoff.
Like the French love Jerry Lewis.
Right. Anything you can remember at all? You've already shared some great memories of this particular song, but just before we remind people how they can, see Brian and Susie Good with Whiskey Jack, and of course Whiskey Jack includes my good friend Banjo Dunc. We're going to give all that info again, but any other information on this jam? Like, I'm curious, what stations would play this song? Like, it sounds like it belongs right on all those album-oriented rock stations.
Yeah, well, it sounds like new country back then.
Yeah. Does that mean Eagles? Is that code for Eagles?
That's kind of, that was the influence right there.
What year is this?
It's an original song.
What year is this, Brian?
Oh, your guess is good. Probably 85, maybe.
Well, I actually have that info at my
now?
disposal. Yes, absolutely. 78.
Oh, goodness.
You're off
See,
by
time
7 years
flies,
there,
yeah,
Brian.
Okay.
An unreliable narrator.
Source. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. It's Eagles-esque, which is a compliment, by the way. And but of course, an original composition. Please come back to me. And it sounds amazing. I was listening to it the other day, and I'm like, oh, man, sounds great. Sounds great. So, quick reminder to everybody listening. I've thoroughly enjoyed my hour plus. How long did Bill King get? I want to know. I want to make sure I got longer than Bill.
Well, we got there at 8 this morning.
And you
It
just
was
left.
a three and a half hour show. He said he'd edit it down. I don't know.
Well, you read my rules, right, Dunk? I demand twice as long as Bill King gets. That's my rule.
Well,
I
we
think
have
you got
dinner. We have a dinner engagement tonight, Mike. We can't stay that long.
All right, so let's get to the. This is important information. I gave it to you earlier, but you go to whiskeyjackmusic.com. You can buy tickets. The 3 shows that we're talking about right now, the upcoming 3 shows. You can tell me if I get this right. November 4th at 7:30 p.m. You're here at the Redwood Theatre in Toronto.
At Gerard and Greenwood, an old vaudevillian theater, a beautiful, absolutely beautiful place.
Man, I mean, I can already hear Canada Kev going to that website and buying tickets because if Brian and Susie Good, and again, I don't mean to slight, but I'm so ignorant to this genre. It's a huge blind spot. Remind me, Marie Bottrell, is that how you say her name?
Country music gold. This woman has been
I'm
part
missing
of the
out.
country music scene and international country music scene since she was 11 years old. And if circumstances had been different and perhaps she had come on the scene at a different time from a Miss Murray, things would have turned out a little bit differently. But it's timing, isn't it, Brian?
Absolutely.
Anne Murray did the anthem. You know, we talked about Brian Good doing the anthem before the Jays' home opener in '83. Anne Murray did the anthem before the home opener in '77.
That's right.
Which was the first ever
Yeah.
Blue Jay game. So, and she's a hell of a golfer, I understand, Anne Murray.
She lived in a golf course on Thornhill.
Did you ever play with her,
Country Club.
Brian?
No, never did.
She'd
Are you
kick-
talking
she'd
about
kick
golf?
your
You're
ass.
talking about golf, I take it.
Yeah, because she plays for a different team. So
Yeah, she would kick my ass, no doubt.
All right, the second night we are going to see these great people. Perry Sound, the stocky.
Yes, and
quartet.
you have an audience in Perry Sound. There's no question about that. And this is another one. Ontario just has. We are so lucky. We have some of the most beautiful theaters in the world, and this is one that's right on Georgian Bay. And if they get there early enough, they'll be able to see the sunset right outside the window of this beautiful.
All right, what
theater.
time is that sunset scheduled for? I need
It's,
to
well,
know.
whenever we go on, that's exactly when the sun is going down.
Okay, cool.
And not only that,
Yeah.
you should remind them that they can also visit the Bobby Orr Museum.
It's right in the same building. That's right, the Bobby Orr Museum.
I just watched
yeah.
the 72 Summit series that Dave Bedini was a part of, and I just watched the whole thing, except
Wow.
there's no interview with Bobby Orr because Bobby Orr refused to be on the documentary because they had Alan Eagleson on the documentary.
Yes.
Good for him.
Yeah. So, I mean, yes. So I don't know if there was
Principled.
yeah, I have no problem with being principled like that. So, but Bobby Orr, I would have liked to heard from him because he was at every game, even though he was not cleared to play in any of those 8 games. Whew. Did you play the anthem in Moscow?
I'd rather not. Thank you.
All right, so that's November 4th, and then the last show there of these 3 is November 5th, where you're at the Gibson Center in Alliston, and that's amazing. And again, I really did hear from somebody who I trust. I heard it was like you take Prairie Home Companion, you add some Grand Ole Opry, and then you sprinkle in some Vinyl Cafe, and you got yourself this Canadian country music
I
legend.
don't know. I get tingles just thinking about it. There's so much.
It's too good to be true.
You just want to hug everybody when you get out of this show. Let me tell you.
It is a feel-good show.
Don't leave. Don't leave about the lasagna. Any final words here?
As
breaking
Susie
news?
just told me, breaking news: the show in Alliston is November 6th, 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
Right. Thank you. You're right. No, that is a 4 p.m. good because, we get tired.
No, Mike, we get tired.
Okay, yeah. So 7:30 is the Toronto because we're up late, and then it comes down a bit for Perry Sound. Now it's a 7 o'clock show for Perry Sound, but those guys in Alliston, those guys and gals, they got to have the show at 4 o'clock. That makes complete sense to me.
We go to bed early up there.
Go to whiskeyjackmusic.com. Did everybody enjoy themselves?
Super
Yes.
time.
Great.
Don't leave
Mike.
without the lasagna, and we got to get that photo. You know that, Dunk, but I need a photo with all of us, and then I need a photo just with Brian.
Yep.
Those are my demands, because Bill King got as much time as I did, so I'm a little upset about that, but that's okay. And that brings us to the end of our 1,133rd show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Banjo Dunk. Are you at Banjo Dunk?
I am so.
And that's a dunk with a C.
That's correct.
Even though the Raptors played tonight, it's not dunk with a K.
That's correct.
Can you dunk?
I cannot.
Just
too short.
a cookie and milk.
I can do that.
Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta's at Palma Pasta. You're getting your lasagna, but I'm also inviting you I'm looking at you, Banjo Dunk, to TMLX 11, the first Saturday of December at noon. We're at Palma's Kitchen. You would love it. You would love it. Sticker U is at Sticker U. Monaris is at Monaris. Raymond James Canada are at Raymond James CDN. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA_Canada. There's a great jam kicking with Cliff Hacking we recorded earlier this week. Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH, and Canna Cabana are at Canna Cabana_. See you all tomorrow night when Bob Willett comes over to kick out jams that don't sound like any other song in the artist's catalog. You're going to love it. See you then.
Guitar is the best that I can. Well, maybe I'm not, and maybe I am. Who gives a damn? Because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything rosy and gray. Well, I've kissed you in France and I've kissed you in Spain, and I've kissed you in places I better not name. And I've seen the sun go down on Sacré-Cœur, but I